Welcome into this week 2 edition of the show from the shoe. I'm Dan Herbener, as it's been for the last year and a week. Sitting next to me is my co-host, Colin Hassel. Colin, how are you doing on this Wednesday evening?
I'm doing just great. Just saw some awesome football this weekend.
That we did. Ohio State pulling out the 42-24 victory over Virginia Tech, exacting some revenge over last year's lone loss. And the big question coming in was who is going to be the quarterback. We heard about it since the end of last year up until the beginning of this year. And Cradle Jones is the guy, and I was wrong. I said it was going to be JT from the get-go after last year, and it just happened to be the big man. And I can be happy that I was wrong because Cradle Jones playing football is fun to watch.
It is so fun to watch. He's a 6'5", 250-pound guy with a rocket arm. He was making some throws yesterday right from the get-go, from the very first throw, that were just on the money, and they were just very smart throws. And when you're thinking of who was going to be the quarterback, a lot of people thought it would be JT Barrett just because Cradle Jones, this deep ball throwing guy, he couldn't hit a lot of these medium patterns. But I really liked what I saw, even though the Buckeyes fell behind 17-14 at the half.
I did as well, and there were certainly some things that happened throughout the game, some drop passes, some penalties, missed blocks that played into Cradle Jones maybe not having the best game that he could have had, but I definitely think he showed why he was the guy for Urban Meyer and why he would be the pick over JT Barrett. I don't think that there's a huge separation between the two. Either one can play quarterback and win a championship. They are very different, but it was very interesting to hear how Urban Meyer said that Cradle Jones was the guy, and he was the guy that needed to be beat out. Because a year ago, it was JT Barrett who beat out Cradle Jones to take this job, but then Cradle comes out, beats 3 teams, wins the national championship, and that was all that Urban Meyer needed to see to determine that Cradle Jones was his guy.
Yeah, I mean, I really liked the way that Cradle played the entire game. He may not be as quick as JT Barrett on the run, but he is powerful, and he's actually like he's a little bit fast. Like he can get away from some linebackers, and if someone does track him down, he's big enough that he's going to move the pile a little bit. So I just really like what. I'm wrong as well because I thought it would be JT Barrett this past week and a half, but I really like what I saw from Cradle Jones in all facets of the game, even the ones that I wasn't really particularly excited to see him. And I thought JT Barrett would be a lot better, and then I remember Cradle Jones better on the short throws. Then I remember Cradle Jones made a few that I really enjoyed seeing.
And Cradle showed a lot of good touch while throwing the football, as opposed to his rocket of an arm, which he showcased a little bit throughout the game. But one little stat going into this game, last year JT Barrett 44% completion against pressure. And we knew that Bud Foster was going to load him up and try and go man-to-man on the outside and bring the blitz. And Cradle Jones, like it or not, he may not be as quick as JT Barrett, but he has better escapability because he's just so hard to bring down. He's done a lot. He's just better against the pressure.
People compare him to Ben Roethlisberger.
Right, because he's just so difficult to bring down. When he gets outside the pocket, he can make guys miss in the open field, and he can run guys over in the open field. And I think that had to be a little portion of this decision for Urban Meyer, but it was great to see Cradle Jones come out and get a win.
Yeah, and Virginia Tech went right back to the Bear defense, which they were really successful with last year. And they had some success with it again, but in slightly different ways. Ohio State couldn't throw deep balls for much of the game until Braxton got open once, Samuel got open once, and then at the end, Thomas had that awesome move on Kendall Fuller, who may be the best cornerback in the nation, basically dropped him and scored a touchdown on JT Barrett's only throw.
Exactly, and it was. If I'm Urban Meyer and I was game planning for this, I was hoping that Bud Foster was going to come out and run the Bear front because although he had success running it against Ohio State, and they probably ran it the best because teams ran the Bear front after Virginia Tech throughout the season because they figured they could stop Ohio State. But then Ohio State got acclimated to it. They found ways to beat it, and they were prepared for it. If I'm Urban Meyer, that's what I wanted you to do. That is exactly what we were preparing for. We knew you were going to do this. Especially once their receivers went down, that had to be your narrow focus, is that we need to find a way to get past this Bear front, and they did just that.
Yeah, and Ohio State had a lot of plays that were specifically specifically designed for the Bear front, and a lot of them I thought that had a lot of success. That Ezekiel Elliott run at the on the second drive, his very first run of the game, was unbelievable. And you saw they had 8 people in the box, and he ran straight up the middle because the safety went on the outside, and he was the one guy who wasn't blocked. And Ezekiel got through one arm tackle from a backside linebacker, and he was gone. But after that play, a lot of people seemed to think that Ezekiel should have ran the ball more. And I was really glad that Urban Meyer decided not to run it any more than he did, because although Zeke had a few other like 8-yard runs, it was really a lot of him dancing away from one Virginia Tech defender in the backfield and making a play by himself. It wasn't because the scheme allowed him to. And then there were a couple other plays like the dump off to Ezekiel, who came in motion towards the sidelines. That happened to Curtis Samuel, and every time it worked. There were 2 times it didn't work, and it was because the Virginia Tech guy batted it down. And if it was completed, one of them could have been into a touchdown for Curtis Samuel.
And just looking at how you said the scheme didn't lend itself to Ezekiel Elliott getting a lot of carries, and you're exactly right. It's a simple numbers game when you get into the zone read, and even if you put a guy like Nick Van Nett inside the tackle box, so that means that he's probably lining up on the inside shoulder of the tackle, it would have been 6 against 8 guys. And you don't like that numbers advantage. And even though you're missing Jalen Marshall, Dontre Wilson, Noah Brown, Corey Smith, you still like the matchups you have on the outside, and you like the fact that Cardale Jones can get the ball down the field. And minus a 2 drop passes by Paris Campbell, the receivers played pretty well, and you know who we're going to talk about now.
Yeah, I was about
to
say, speaking of wide receivers beating people down the field.
Miller, we said before that he's going to have a big game, and he absolutely did do that.
He looks like a Heisman possible.
Her stats were not amazing, but certainly just the shock value of some of the plays he made. That spin move, it's going to be seen for the rest of the season. The catch down the field. His other catch as well, on a low ball where he has to dive and make a nice play. That's his first catch of his career.
3 tremendous plays. And I want to talk about, that first catch of his career, that was an amazing catch. The spin move was like video game like. You don't see that. But then I want to
that's a terrible tackling technique. Like, you got to come in, you break down. I understand it's a big guy trying to tackle him, but just break down. You're gonna be on a video for the rest of the year because you didn't tackle him.
My man on Virginia Tech went somersaulting.
But either way, go ahead.
But I want to talk about the one play where he scored a touchdown on the right side. Cardale Jones rolled out, and you couldn't really see what was going on. I'm not sure, but like I said, that little pass to Ezekiel on the flats, it would have been working the entire game, and he pump faked to that. He drew 2 defenders up, and all of a sudden Ohio State had 2 wide receivers running deep. And somehow there was a guy wide open, short for about 8 yards, and Cardale Jones hit Bradson Miller, who had broken open by like 3 yards from his defender, and he somehow scored. I don't even know how the defender didn't touch his legs at the time. I still don't know, but that was amazing luck and an amazing game for Braxton.
And those are the type of things where you talk about Urban Meyer expecting Virginia Tech to line up in this bear front, and that's what you can do. You get the schematic advantage, and once they started throwing that pass out there, they knew that Bud Foster's defense was going to be coming up to that, so they run a little fake for it. And those are the kind of things that make a team great. That's the kind of things that lend themselves to national championships. It's not just having this just raw talent, which Ohio State clearly has. It's being able to take advantage of matchups and knowing schemes, and Urban Meyer does that to the fullest of his ability.
Before we touch on the defense, one last thing, and Zeke. Punt returning. Whew.
You gotta catch the ball, my friend.
I can't stand watching Ohio State. Any team that I root for, they all are terrible at punt returning. Ezekiel had his fumble. Maybe Jalen Marshall will improve on last year. I expect him to be back in that spot this upcoming game against Hawaii. But I wasn't mad at Urban like some people were. Why do you have him back there? Well, he's Ezekiel Elliott. You want to get him a lot of touches. They knew that he wasn't going to get a ton of touches in the run game, so they might as well work him in the preseason at punt returner. And I'm gonna guess he was fairly good at catching punts in practice. It just didn't translate, and someone's got to catch punts.
It's definitely something that just you need to write right now, because turning the ball over there is not something that you're going to be able to deal with throughout the season. But defensively for Ohio State, I thought it was a solid performance. I thought that it's difficult because you, as a Virginia Tech team, loses Michael Brewer halfway through the game, and then Ohio State just kind of dominates from there. But what did you see on defense that maybe you liked and maybe you didn't like?
Well, if you look at the box score, Virginia Tech had 44 rushes for 128 yards, which is an average of 2.9 yards per carry, which really sounds amazing if you're looking at it from an Ohio State perspective. It means that they just completely shut down the run. But when I was watching the game back, I really didn't think Ohio State did a great job against the run. There were a few times where I thought Raekwon McMillan was a little bit late when he came up and attacked. I thought Darren Lee had an amazing game, but I thought that also the defensive tackles, Adolphus Washington had a great game in space and in rushing the passer. But he wasn't great against the run, and neither was Tommy Shutt, the other defensive tackle.
I saw the same thing from Josh Perry that you're talking about, is he was late getting up, and it was a problem last year. He wasn't aggressive enough at times, and that's just something where he needs to read a play and go. Mm-hmm. It's something that he's going to have to improve upon. But you talk about it's just the first game, and the wheel route they hit to Sam Rogers, the fullback, that's just a missed assignment. Yeah. And it's stuff that will right itself throughout the season when you have more chemistry and you gel better. I think the defense played pretty well.
And that wheel route that you're talking about, I think schematically, we'll never know because we're not Urban Meyer. I think it might have been Tommy Shutt who was covering the fullback. I don't know because
I don't think it was. I think he went to go make a play, but I don't think that would ever be the case. Interior lineman. But those are things that'll right themselves. If we're looking at other concerns, though.
Well, one of my concerns, it wasn't even a great concern. I thought Jalen Holmes had a fairly decent game at defensive end, and I thought Tyquan Lewis was up and down, but I thought he was pretty good. Jalen Holmes also had the forced fumble, which really turned the momentum. Ohio State already had the momentum after Michael Brewer's injury, and then that just really put Virginia Tech away, even though I'm not even sure were they up 4 points at the moment. I think so. But Joey Bosa next week, I didn't appreciate losing him enough. I thought that losing Jalen Marshall, Corey Smith, and Dontre Wilson would be bigger. He's going to have a tremendous impact against the run and the pass. Because Hubbard had his sack, but it was more the terrible cut block by the offensive lineman.
He will absolutely be huge to get back, of course. He will help the defense. You look at some other things, turnovers, penalties, 6 penalties, 58 yards, holding. Got to right the ship.
They had 2 holding penalties on one play. Last year they had 2 holding penalties all year.
Got to right the ship there.
Mm-hmm.
But these are all things where you just look and you say, it's early in the year. And yeah, this team's supposed to be as talented as all get out. Well, they were missing 5 key guys, and they just scored 42 points against one of the better defenses in the entire country. It was a very impressive performance.
Yeah, and it was the first half did have me a little bit worried when I was watching it back. But at no point, even when it was 17-14 at the half, did I think Ohio State was getting outplayed. I think Ohio State was the better team all night. But Virginia Tech had those little gadget plays and things like you're talking about the wheel route. When they were on the goal line, it was 3rd and goal. Ohio State had stuffed them twice on runs, and they hit the tight end who came across the field pretending to be a lineman and was just wide open. It's those things that as a Virginia Tech you need to hit to win, and it kept them in the game. But then once Michael Brewer went out, the Buckeyes just immediately took over, and they Virginia Tech never had another chance at it.
They just didn't have enough talent to compete with Ohio State, and they scored on 2 gadget plays, like you said, guys sneaking out of the backfield, and Ohio State just being too aggressive. And like I said, those things will fix themselves as the year goes on. It was clear that Ohio State was the better football team.
And you talked about talent, and Virginia. The thing is, Virginia Tech had clearly much less talent, but looking ahead. Until Michigan State, there's no team that I think, unless maybe Penn State turns it around, maybe Minnesota against TCU, that was the real deal. Until Michigan State game, the second to last week of the regular season, I don't know that Ohio State's going to face a team this good.
I don't know that they do.
Yeah.
I don't think they do either.
No.
I really don't. And it's a difficult thing because you kind of get into sleepwalk mode, even as a fan, because you're watching these games and you're looking forward to Ohio State going to the national championship. You want that now, but as a fan and as a team, you can't do it. You need to appreciate the ride, and it's something it's so difficult to do after you just won a national championship, to appreciate the season in front of you, and that's what you have to do now. You just have to find a way to appreciate Ohio State football.
Yeah, and people love to talk about Cradle Jones had three games and 3 trophy ceremonies and 3 times with confetti falling on his head in college. And now he's starting out with Virginia Tech, which is a big game. Then he's got Hawaii, Northern Illinois, Western Michigan, Indiana, Maryland. I mean, Ohio State has to stay zoned in, or else they're gonna be susceptible at some point. But Man, I don't see this team losing for a while.
I don't know who it's going to be either.
No.
And one interesting point to watch, like you said about Cardale Jones, is how does he perform against a lesser opponent?
Mm-hmm.
We haven't seen it yet. It'll be very interesting to watch.
When he goes to Indiana after Northern Illinois and Western Michigan and Hawaii, I feel like after those 3 games, he's just gonna be feeling real good. And I'm a little bit worried for just those weird away games, Rutgers later, Illinois.
It'll be fun to watch. Just kind of getting cruise control in this September. I will try my best not to, but oh well. We now welcome in David McCracken from the Cradle Hawaii student newspaper there at Hawaii University. David, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for having me, guys.
I really do hope I said that right.
That
was definitely one of my biggest fears coming into this podcast, so I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah, trust, I have a lot of trouble pronouncing some of these names too.
All right, so coming into this week, obviously Ohio State coming off a big win, Hawaii getting a win of their own. What's a reason why Hawaii will not make this game a blowout? What can they do to make this interesting against Ohio State? I understand it's kind of an overwhelming task having to deal with a lot of talent, but you're making the trip. You got to think of some excuses why it will not be a blowout. What are some?
Well, I mean, just like you said, Ohio State, I think they're 40-point favorites going over Hawaii,
Yep.
so the spread's pretty ridiculous on it. But I guess some bright points from Hawaii. This is the best team Norm Chow has had in his 4 years here. He actually finally has a quarterback in Max Wittek who can at least show some confidence under center. We have a lot of players that got 1 year older, such as the receivers Marcus Camp and Quentin Pedroza, 2 big guys, 6'2" and 6'4" respectively, who can definitely open up Ohio State defense. On defense is really our calling point here at Hawaii. I don't know if you saw last week against Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
The opening drive on defense, we forced a 3 and out, and then immediately after got a block punt. Our offense got the ball in the red zone and scored. So our special teams and defense is really our calling card. But going up against Ohio State is going to be a whole other animal trying to handle Ezekiel Elliott, and Braxton Miller, who he looks like he could be a first-round pick if he keeps this play up after what he did against Virginia Tech.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned Norm Chow, how this is the best quarterback that he's had, and Max Wittek, the USC transfer. So since 2012, he's went 3-9 in 2012, 1-11 in 2013, 4-9 last year. Is there a reason why you think he's been around, other than the fact that he just has a lot of experience at big schools like USC and even in the NFL with the Titans?
Yeah, I mean, you can't deny his background. I mean, he's won offense coordinator of the year, I think, a couple times in NCAA Division I football. I mean, the reason why he's still here is obviously UH cannot afford to buy out his contract because he still has this year and the season after where he's still owed over $1 million. And UH has been a deficit for the past decade, so they can't afford to fire any coaches. So they really just have to ride it out with this guy. But the good thing about this season is that this is finally Chow's year. He tore this program apart after Greg McCracken left 4 years ago. After we went 6-7 and we're co-WAC champions with Nevada, I believe. And these are all his players that he's recruited, and this is the first time we finally got to see if Chow can prove himself to earn maybe a second contract in a year and a half's time.
You talk about how Norm Chow has had all the success as an offensive coordinator, and he's been given a pretty big weapon in Max Wittek, the USC transfer.
Yeah.
How do you get a guy like that, first of all, and just how excited is a guy like Norm Chow, who's had success, like I said, to have a big name like him, who was a very highly touted recruit coming out of high school, and now he's leading a program, and just try and expound on how you think Norm Chow will take advantage of Max Wittek's talent.
Well, let's just be frank. We had Taylor Graham, who transferred over from Ohio State just a couple years ago, actually, and he just could not stay healthy. We were really looking forward to him because he was a 4-star recruit, just like Wittek coming out of high school. But things just didn't pan out. But through spring ball and through training camp this past summer, Norm Chow has made comparisons to Carson Palmer for Max Wittek. I don't know if that's a little too lofty, especially here in Hawaii, because we've had some successful quarterbacks in Brian Moniz and Cole Brennan who did make the NFL. But, Wittek has been our best quarterback we've had the past 4 years. And, it's not just his involvement with Chow, it's also our new offensive coordinator, Don Bailey, who comes from a Division II school, but they average 40 points a game. And we're basically the Oregon of Division II football. This guy guy, he doesn't have a set playbook. Everyone takes handwritten notes for each play. They're aggressive going on 2-point conversions. It's a fun offense to watch, really. But against Ohio State, let's be honest, we'll probably be playing from behind most of the game. So it'll be just an aerial assault from Wittek.
Yeah, I definitely expect that to be the case. So one of the more interesting things I think from Hawaii that people at Ohio State really never get to see is Hawaii comes all the way from Hawaii, obviously. So how does that flight how does that affect the game?
Well, I mean, the time difference is pretty vast. I don't know the exact number in my head, but it's kind of Midwest America going to Ohio State. And the problem is with Hawaii's schedule this year, we play 13 games in 13 weeks. There is no bye week. And after, I think, next week, we play Wisconsin again, another Big Ten school. So we're playing 2 Big Ten schools in the span of 3 weeks. So it's a lot of traveling. But, I mean, I think, playing these type of away games at 3:30 Eastern time, that's like playing at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning in Hawaii. So that's really a disadvantage because these players would just be getting used to waking up in the morning and have to go out and play the number 1 team in the nation. It's a little ridiculous to ask. But, I mean, the amount of traveling, you got to get the freaking flyer miles up, I suppose.
Absolutely, and it is a very difficult thing to ask of teenagers and people in their early 20s to get up that early and go play a football game against such a talented team. So normally on this podcast, we like to end with a prediction. We won't hold it against you if you do call the upset. That's something that we see fairly often. So can you give us a prediction? Do you have one?
You're not going to hold me to it, though, right?
No, I will not.
Okay, well, I mean, Ohio State's, they're getting Joey Bosa back, who let alone could, I think, wreck our offensive line. We did pretty well against Colorado, only allowed 1 sack, and Joey Bosa could be the number 1 pick next year in the draft. So him alone makes a huge impact. I think Ohio State would be 21 by the end of the first quarter. So I think this could be a blowout. I'm going to predict 45 to, let's say, 17 for Ohio State.
Wow. Okay.
Covering the spread.
That's not bad.
Yeah, but I mean, you never know. I mean, it's college football. We saw who was it?
That was
BYU and Nebraska.
Yeah, crazy game there.
Yeah, I mean,
a couple years back,
you never know
Stanford against USC, 40-point dogs, and they
exactly.
won. So anything could happen. Well, David, thank you very much for your time. We do appreciate you coming on the show from the shoe.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. It's awesome.
Absolutely. Good luck with everything this year.
You too. Have a good one.
So that was David McCracken of the Kaleo o Hawaii student newspaper at Hawaii University. I know I didn't say it right, but it's okay. He obliged me anyways. So as far as breakout players, we're just going to punch through these real quick. My breakout player is Cradle Jones. I want to see him against a lesser opponent. I think it'll be interesting to watch, but there isn't one guy where I can just say he needs to play well for Ohio State to win. I think Ohio State wins this game going away, no matter if they even play down to the level.
Yeah, I know ESPN had that graphic where there's a 99% chance of them winning. I'm not even sure that's high enough. I don't see a scenario in which Ohio State loses. But I'm just ready for the return of Joey Bosa. I think he's going to have a tremendous game.
That's a good one. I appreciate that pick.
Yeah, What am I going to say? I'm going to look for a matchup in the Ohio State-Hawaii game. I'm looking for Bosa to have a few sacks.
It'll be fun to watch, and certainly Hawaii making a 6-hour trip or not 6 hours. It's a 6-hour difference. Yeah. It's like a 12-hour trip, but that's not going to help them any. What is your prediction for the game?
A lot to a little. I'm going to go with Ohio State around 70-14.
Give me 63-7. I say they pull off the dogs at the end. And really, trying to be as objective as possible, Ohio State is just multiple levels above Hawaii.
Yeah, they're really not close. And these next 3 games for Ohio State are just going to be absolute blowouts.
They are going to put it on cruise control. But that will do it for Colin and I for this week. Game is at 3:30 in the Shoe on Saturday. But for Colin Hassel, I'm Dan Herbener. This has been the show from the Shoe, and we'll see you next week.